If you think your church speakers burn because the amplifier power is too high, you might be making a big mistake, because many church speakers actually burn when the amplifier power is too low, not when it is too high. Let's talk about why. Shalom to you, my friends. My name is Isaac Okunla from Church Media Volunteers Academy, where we impact media volunteers with the technical and spiritual knowledge needed to serve God better in the media. If that sounds like you, I want you to consider subscribing to my channel. Now back to the video. Why church speakers burn often? First of all, you need to understand the signs of what happens inside a speaker when it burns. Now, when we say a speaker is burnt, most of the time we are referring to the voice coil inside the speaker. So the voice coil is the only part of that speaker that actually carries electricity, which means it is also the only part that can electrically burn. So when your amplifier sends signals into the speaker, those signals are actually sent as electrical energy. It is this voice coil inside the speaker that converts that energy, that electricity, into motion of the cone of the speakers, which you now hear as sound. Now, but during this conversion process, something else happens. Heat is produced. And the heat that is produced inside of this coil during that conversion is actually much more greater than the motion that it creates for the sound. In fact, in theory, it is said that only about 5% of the energy becomes sound, while the remaining 95% is released as heat. Here is the interesting part. The 5% that produces sound happens because the speaker cone moves in and it moves out. Now that movement, the in and out movement of the cone, also pushes air around the voice coil. It is that air that helps to cool the voice coil down. So the speaker actually has a natural cooling system. Now here is where the real problem begins. If anything stops the voice coil from moving, the cone also stops moving. And once the cone stops moving, the air cooling system stops as well. And when that cooling system shuts down, the coil goes from producing 95% of heat to almost 100% of heat. So the heat increases until eventually the wire overheats and melts. Now when it melts, that's when the speaker is damaged. There are two main things that can shut down the cooling system inside of the speaker. The first is sending too much power from your amplifier. The second is sending a clipped signal. And more often than not, many churches fall into the second category. They send a clipped signal into the speaker. Now, here's why that usually happens. When a church has a low power amplifier, but they still want that same amplifier, they want that same system to be loud enough to cover the entire space of the auditorium, the operator will be forced to push the mixer or the amplifier harder and harder. Now, in the process of pushing it harder, the signal will begin to clip. So instead of sending a clean, stronger signal, because that's what you think when you're increasing the volume, a distorted, clipped signal into the speaker. Now that clipped signal is what chokes the movement of the voice coil. It stops the cooling process and the coil begins to overheat rapidly. Now that is often what leads to speaker damage. This is why low power amplifiers are more responsible, or actually responsible, for many burnt speakers, because most churches, due to constraints in their budget, they tend to underbuy equipment rather than overbuy it. Here is a simple way you can know that your amplifier is underpowered for your church. If you have to turn the volume knob of your amplifier almost all the way up before the speakers are loud enough, that is a strong sign or a strong signal that your amplifier doesn't have enough power for that space. But if the amplifier is properly powered, something interesting happens. You will likely hurt your ears before you hurt the speakers. So instead of being forced to turn the volume up, you will actually find yourself turning it down because it is even too loud for your ears. Now, I'll give you practical steps, things you can do to avoid damaging your speakers. Number one is to try to get an amplifier that is about twice the power rating of your speakers. It may sound surprising to some of you, but it is actually safer. You see, a stronger amplifier can deliver clean power without struggling. Even when the music gets loud, In fact, it reduces the temptation to push the system into clipping. Second step is avoid running your speakers at very high levels for long periods of time. If the energy entering the speaker becomes greater than the heat it can release, the temperature inside the voice coil will rise very quickly. Now, the third step is avoid microphone feedback, especially those high-pitched squeals. Those sudden spikes can send dangerous bursts of energy to your speakers, and that can damage your speakers, particularly the tweeters. Now, the fourth step is control your stage volume. If the instruments and monitors on stage are too loud, the volunteer behind the engine or behind the sound equipment will be forced to push the main speakers harder. That will increase the risk of thermal overload. The fifth step is always practice proper gain staging. If your signal is clipping at any stage before it reaches the amplifier, the speaker will receive a distorted energy. Now, that distorted energy will force the system to work harder, and it will produce more heat, and it is what we want to avoid in the voice coil. The sixth step is make sure your amplifier has proper ventilation. When amplifiers overheat, they are more likely to clip or behave unstably, and clipping can damage your speakers. Now, the seventh practical step is to keep dust away from the speaker cone. Excessive dust can restrict cone movement, and it can introduce mechanical stress into your speaker. Now, the eighth practical step is to always power your sound system on and off in the correct order. Voltage spikes caused by incorrect power sequencing can send sudden bursts of energy that can damage your speaker components. And what should be the right order of putting on and off your sound equipment? Just know that the amplifier that is powering the speaker should be the last thing you will turn on, and should be the first thing that you will turn off whenever you want to turn on and off, because the amplifier is directly supplying the speakers. So when the amplifier is already on, before you turn on your microphones and the other equipment, is going to send sudden burst of energy into that sound system, and you want to avoid that. Ninth step is avoid extreme EQ boost. When you boost certain frequencies excessively, the amplifier is forced to deliver much more power at those frequencies. So this can also overstress specific parts of your speaker. For example, now if you are boosting the high frequencies too much, it can easily damage your tweeters, and also too much of low frequency can damage your woofers. 10th practical step, use crossover or high pass filters to prevent speakers from trying to reproduce frequencies that they were never designed to handle. Every speaker has a frequency range that it is designed to handle. So if you introduce any sound or any frequency into your system that the speaker cannot handle, you will overwork the speaker, and it can damage the speaker. So check your manufacturer manual to know the frequency range of your speaker. Too much low frequency energy can damage the woofer. It can cause overheating and create mechanical strain. Now, the 11th practical step is use speaker protection tools like limiters. Limiters help to prevent sudden peaks and excessive power from reaching your speakers. So it protects your speakers from those sudden spikes. And finally, avoid connecting too many speakers to a single amplifier channel. It can cause overheating. The amplifier will overheat and send unstable power to the speakers. I would like to read your thoughts. Which of these solutions are you going to practice in your church? Or which one do you think your church needs the most? Put your thoughts down, let me know in the comment section. Remember this, it is far safer to use a powerful amplifier and keep the volume at a reasonable level than use a small amplifier and constantly push it into the red. Many churches keep spending money repairing and replacing speakers, when what they actually need is proper sound system setup and training. If you serve in a church media team, I want you to subscribe to my channel for more practical church sound training tips like this. And if your church needs help setting up or protecting your sound system, you can reach out to me as well. Until I come your way again in another video, I want you to remain faithful in the Lord's service. God bless you. Bye.